Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit more about how to detach from your manifestation, and more specifically, how to turn your detachment knob within your state of being so that your state of consciousness is shifted to the reality where we already have our manifestation so that it has no choice but to materialize onto the screen of space. Now, as you guys know at this point, the way that I reality select is by turning 4 specific knobs within my state of being. The first knob is selecting what I want, where I'm using my imagination and seeing my reality where I already have the thing that I want. The second knob is the belief knob, and more specifically, the belief level knob. The third knob is detachment, which I like to think of as a security knob. And then my fourth knob is integrating back into physical reality. Basically, where I'm focusing on not rejecting my current reality, but more so accepting it so that I can move through it automatically to the reality where I have my manifestation. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to turn the detachment knob, and more specifically talk about what I like to call the spectrum of detachment, and how you can use this scale in order to detach from your manifestation. Or as I like to think of it, shift to a more secure state of being, a more secure state of consciousness, where you already have your manifestation in your inner world. Because as we know, our state of consciousness is the thing that is projected out onto the screen of space. If we want to change our physical reality, we want to change our state of consciousness. And the first point I want to bring up when it comes to this topic or this knob of detachment is the only reason why you want to turn your detachment knob is only so that when you go back into physical reality and persist in your new reality, in your imagination, you're not accidentally going back to physical reality and projecting the state of lack, which is a very insecure state of being. That's why I like to think of detachment as more of finding your own levels of security with your manifestation in your inner world, rather than trying to find a way to not want your manifestation anymore or trying to find a way to let go of your manifestation. For me, it's a lot easier to understand this idea of attachment as a form of lack within your inner world. And all you're doing is just double checking to make sure that you're not in that state of lack in your imagination. And for the record, there's nothing wrong with the state of being of lack. In fact, as I mentioned in my How I Reality Select video, it's the first step in any manifestation process. When we look at this cycle of manifesting, your first step is perceiving lack. This is how you receive your desire, is by perceiving lack in your physical reality. Remember, yes, we are just, awareness, and we are whole and complete inherently, but we are awareness having a linear experience. And what that means is that we are going to be perceiving lack in our linear world. There's nothing wrong with this. It's the point of experiencing anything. In fact, it's how we experience things in physical reality. But the whole point here is that experiencing lack is not a bad thing. It's just the first step of the process. It's the first step in manifesting anything you want. It's the step where you receive your desire. What we're learning how to do as conscious creators is learning how to shift our consciousness to realities where we have the thing that we are perceiving as a lack in physical reality. And by selecting the reality where we have what we want in our imagination and persisting in that new reality in our imagination, what naturally happens is that our imagination is projected onto the screen of space or into physical reality. The whole point of detachment is not to go back to the state of lack or the reality of lack in your imagination. Lack is a very insecure state of being because what lack implies is that we are missing something. And again, nothing's wrong with that because it's the first step in the manifestation process in our linear experience. But after we use our imagination to pick the reality where we have the thing that we want, our singular goal when it comes to detachment is just to make sure that we're not going back to that insecure state of being, which implies lack of your manifestation. In other words, coming out of your imagination where you have the thing that you want and then going back into physical reality and being like, I need this thing, I don't have this thing. What if this thing doesn't come to fruition? All of those thoughts can be indicators that your alignment is off in your state of consciousness with having that thing that you want in your imagination. That's all it means. And so our goal when it comes to manifesting and persisting in our imagination until it projects onto the screen of space is to find our own levels of security with our manifestation in our inner world so that we're not accidentally projecting lack onto our physical world. And so that's the first thing to understand when it comes to this realm of detachment. It's not about not wanting your desire anymore. And it's not even about becoming this, pious person who could never want anything because they're so whole and complete exactly as they are right now. And for the record, if you do want to be the person who has monk levels of detachment, by all means go for it. But what I'm trying to get across here is that you don't need that. You don't need to necessarily be that person in order to get what you want. It's more about understanding the cycle of manifesting and more so learning how to manipulate your state of consciousness so that you can experience reality the way you want to experience reality. Now, with all of that being said, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the way that I like to think of detachment is very much like a spectrum that ranges from extreme attachment to extreme detachment. And so to illustrate this further, this is what the spectrum of detachment looks like. Here are all the levels of insecurity that I have identified when it comes to this realm of attachment versus detachment. On one end, we have a survival level of insecurity. I need my manifestation in order to survive this experience in physical reality. The next level up from this is a 3D reality level of insecurity, meaning that you're afraid of experiencing a sort of pain if you do not get your manifestation. So it's not as severe as your own levels of survival in physical reality, but you are apprehensive of a certain type of pain that you may experience if you don't get your manifestation. The next level is a personal identity insecurity, where you perceive not getting your manifestation as not being the person that you want to be. Like, if I don't get my manifestation, then that means that I am not this person. And then very closely, if not, I kind of consider these two almost like the same, but another type of insecurity that can come up is a level of insecurity that comes sometimes with the manifestation process itself. And so understanding that these levels of attachment are all perceptions of lack is the first step in learning how to turn your knob of insecurity to security when it comes to having your manifestation and shifting in your inner state of being, which means that you are changing your state of consciousness to not having your manifestation to the state of consciousness of having your manifestation. Again, keep in mind, the goal isn't necessarily to become, the highest master of detachment or being this monk who could never want anything in physical reality because it's the most pious thing to do. Rather, this is just a step to help shift your state of consciousness out of the insecure feeling of lack to the state of consciousness of having your manifestation. The reason why you want your manifestation in the first place is because on a linear level, you are perceiving the lack. And you think that by receiving that manifestation, it's going to make you feel secure. It's going to make you feel good. It's going to make you feel better than where you currently are in your physical experience. But as we know with manifesting, that's putting the cart before the horse. It's by changing us that we change the 3D reality. Now, one thing that I've realized when it comes to detachment, any type of detachment, is that this core state of being or the core state of consciousness that indicates detachment is actually the state of being of indifference. In other words, indifference is the core vibration of security or the core vibration of having. On this side of the spectrum, your state of being is in a very secure state of being. Now, you don't need to get to extreme levels of security in order to manifest what you want, but you do want to be aware of the fact that all of these different states of being are actually indicative of a lacked base state of consciousness, indicated by that level of insecurity. So this is all well said and good, but how do you actually do this? How do you turn your detachment knob from an insecure state of being to a secure state of being, or more specifically, from the state of being of not having to the state of being of having your manifestation? Well, because we live in an infinite universe, there are an infinite number of ways to do this. And actually, a secret to figuring out how to do this, and I don't really hear many people talking about this, but it was actually something that I realized a little bit earlier on. Your secret to detachment actually lies in the reason why you want your manifestation in the first place. And I want to provide specific examples that I went through and how I turned my own levels of insecurity to a more secure state of being where I had my manifestation in my state of consciousness. And the pattern you're going to notice in all of these examples is that essentially what I was doing was self-soothing myself back to a certain level of indifference about my manifestation on some level. Not necessarily to the point where I didn't want my manifestation anymore, but more specifically where I got to a point with my manifestation where I didn't need it in my physical reality to make myself feel better. So the first example I'm going to give is regarding a manifestation where my perception of the lack of this manifestation triggered an extremely strong survival instinct within my state of being. And I'm not going to get into too many specifics when it comes to the story. I do eventually plan on creating a video on this particular manifestation because it is one of the bigger ones that I have experienced. But this was with a manifestation where I experienced a reality with one of my YouTube channels getting hacked. At this point, you guys know that I am a faceless YouTuber, meaning that I have a couple faceless YouTube channels. And these faceless YouTube channels are basically my source of income. And not only that, but I have spent at least, at this point, it's going on 4 years of building these faceless YouTube channels. Meaning that I've not only invested a lot of money into these YouTube channels, but I've also invested a lot of my time into these channels. And like I said, I had an experience where one of my YouTube channels, in fact, it was my most popular YouTube channel, my biggest YouTube channel, it got hacked. And the scariest part about this was that I didn't even know how it got hacked. Like, I'm not out here clicking like sketchy links or anything, but one day I tried to log into my Gmail account, and long story short, I couldn't get into my Gmail account one day. And it turns out it was actually an extremely high level hack. This one Gmail account, I know this is not smart, but at the time, this one Gmail account was connected to all of my YouTube channels, and not only my YouTube channels, but my bank accounts, my Google Docs, my tax information, my flight information, like all of these. This one Gmail account was connected to basically everything, my entire online existence, essentially. And so it was actually a very scary experience because not only had I just lost my YouTube channel that I had spent at the time like 3 years building and putting a lot of money in and a lot of time in, but it got to the point where my bank accounts were at stake too. And not only that, but my own personal identity was being threatened. Like, there was actually a point in this process where I was, obviously calling my banks and trying to like secure them and get this email off of them. And I remember the guy on the other end, he was like, I would look into identity theft at this point because at this level of a hack may require you to start looking into identity theft options. And I remember hearing that, and like, it obviously, the guy was really nice, but that did not help my state of being, nor my levels of security with the manifestation that I was persisting in when it came to getting my channel back and having everything be okay. And so this experience, when I say I had such a fear-based response to it, it was like, I call it my week of hell because it was basically an experience where for an entire week, I was waking up stressed out of my mind, trying to get my channel back, sitting on the phone with all of these professionals, trying to secure my identity and my bank accounts. There was just a lot of fear and insecurity about this particular experience. What ended up happening was within the span of the week, every single time I tried harder to get my channel back or try to secure my identity or secure my bank accounts, it was like another reason to worry came up. So for example, after I secured my bank accounts, another one of my emails got hacked. The scariest part about this experience too, like I said, was actually the fact that I had no idea where it had come from. And not only that, but I met with the professionals and every single one of them told me, you're not going to get your channel back. It is impossible. The best thing we can recommend you do is start another Gmail account and then start another YouTube channel. And I was like, I remember hearing that information being like, you do not understand. This Gmail account is not only connected to my channels, but it's connected to my entire life online. Like I said, what this experience brought up in me was a lot of insecurity, a lot of fear, and valid fear at that, because if you are being told that your entire identity is being threatened to the point where you may need to change identities, that's kind of freaky. That's not something that's taken lightly, right? It's scary. And I know there could be symbolism behind that experience. I don't know. But all I know is that within that experience, that week-long experience, I was in massive fight or flight. I was in a very insecure state of being, even though I was persisting in the reality where I got my Gmail account back. And so I remember it was the seventh day, and no, this is not biblical, but I remember it was on the seventh day that I woke up and I was I remember sitting in bed and being like, I cannot go to my laptop right now. Up until this point, what I had been doing was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and going straight to my laptop and basically fighting this, fighting the hacks of my Gmail accounts, fighting the hacks of my bank accounts. It felt like this, just, I'd wake up and go into battle. That's what it was like. And I remember on the seventh day, I woke up and I was like, I cannot go back to my computer right now. I need to, I don't have it within me to go to my computer and fight this anymore. And so instead, I remember I went and got my coffee. It was a very almost like an out of body experience, but I remember I went and got my coffee, and instead of going to my computer, I went outside. And I remember just sitting out on the front porch. and staring at the trees with like my French press in one hand and my coffee mug in the other. And I was just like staring. I remember just feeling so defeated. And it was a little bit freaky because I didn't actually have a feeling other than complete fatigue. I basically worked myself up to this point. And I remember at some point I was like, you need to like, I've had experiences like this where I have basically gotten to the point of like almost like dissociating a little bit. And I remember at this point I was like, you need to like cry, you need to get angry, you need to like do something in order to express this like blocked emotion in you. And I couldn't even do that. It wasn't until I realized that I need to find a way to be okay with the situation and I need to find a way to survive it without getting my manifestation. I need to find a way to not need this manifestation. Even if that meant giving up my YouTube channels, even if that meant losing all of the money in my bank accounts, and even if that meant, you know, having to give up my identity and having to change my name or having to, you know, change the state in which I lived in. Although it sounds dramatic, that's just where I was at that point. And it wasn't until I started considering life without my manifestation that I actually have an emotional reaction. I remember when I started exploring these, like finding ways to be okay and surviving the current situation that I was in, that I actually start expressing the emotion that I felt was like kind of blocked in me at that particular moment. And once I started like really crying and like finding a way to be okay without my manifestation in my current present reality, did I not only start expressing an emotion, which actually felt really good because, like I said, at that point, I was very much like blocked in the emotion. I was kind of like a shell of a human being staring out at a tree with like a coffee mug in my hand and a French press in the other. But not only did I start expressing the emotions, but I started finding a way to be okay with my current reality exactly as it was. And I kid you not, that day, the most sketch way of getting my YouTube channel back, and more specifically my Gmail account back, came into my physical experience. Like I said, this was one of my bigger manifestations. I'm not going to go into too much details with it here, but the point I want to make here is that the way that I turned my very high level of insecurity from this like extreme fear-based response to my physical reality to a more secure state was actually finding a way to survive the current reality that I was in. And I know a lot of people don't really like the word survive, but when you're in that kind of experience where you feel like you're literally just surviving, asking yourself, how can I survive current reality exactly as it is without my manifestation, can actually offer you that feeling of relief or that feeling of security because you realize that you can and you will survive this. And so sometimes asking yourself that question where you are addressing the fear that you have within the question, like, how am I going to survive this, can actually serve as a form of acceptance for where you're currently at so that you're no longer resisting it. So that's the story of how I turned that very high level of insecurity about not having my manifestation to a level of security without having my manifestation in my physical reality. Now, with that being said, the next level of insecurity that you may be facing when it comes to not having your manifestation in physical reality is what I like to call the 3D reality level of insecurity. And the way that I like to see this particular level of insecurity is more like the reason why you want your manifestation is because you view not getting your manifestation as experiencing something painful. So, in other words, if I do not get my manifestation, then I will experience this feeling of pain, whether that feeling of pain is physical or emotional. The example or the story that I want to share for this one is actually when I was ordering a new chair for my office desk. I actually shared a little bit of the story in one of my other videos. I forget which one it is, but basically, as you guys know, one of my favorite types of manifestations is actually manifesting my Amazon packages to come at a very specific date and time. In fact, I pride myself in my ability to do this pretty accurately and pretty consistently. With this particular story, the reason why I was getting a new office chair was actually because my old office chair was giving me back pain. Like, if I sat in that chair for more than like 5 to 10 minutes would actually really start to hurt my lower back. And I tried like all different like, positions and like trying to basically alleviate the pain because I didn't really want to have to buy a new office chair. But it got to the point where I started to avoid work because of the pain that would come within like 5 to 10 minutes of me sitting down to work. So I ended up, pulling the trigger and buying a new and improved chair. Now, as you guys know, I don't have Amazon Prime, meaning that I don't get the packages within the 2-day period that they say you can get them if it's ordered through Amazon. So the way that I get my packages when I want them is I manifest them to come earlier, or I manifest them to come when I want them to come. And so with this particular situation, when I placed the order for this chair, it actually told me that the estimated delivery date was going to be 3 weeks. I think it was like 3 weeks after I had placed the order, meaning that I was going to have to wait 3 weeks with my lower back pain until I got the chair. But of course, being the kind of cocky manifester that I was with, manifesting Amazon packages, I was like, oh, I'll just manifest this to come earlier so that I can, experience more comfort at my office desk. And so what I did was I do my manifestation process when it comes to manifesting on a deadline, where I basically see, the day that I want to manifest the package arriving, and I see myself interacting with that object on that particular day. So in this example, I actually chose a Saturday to manifest this chair because I didn't want it to mess up the days that I had planned for my work, because I knew that when I got the chair, I was going to basically drop everything and just like have to assemble the chair. And I didn't want it to necessarily mess up my workflow. So I was like, okay, I'm going to manifest this on Saturday, which is one of the days that I usually take as a more, break time from work. So I was like, okay, I imagined myself receiving the chair on Saturday, and I selected the reality in my imagination where I got the chair on Saturday. And I was like, yes, I believe this is possible for me, and we're good to go. But even after I selected the reality in my imagination, I still felt kind of like off about it. And I didn't know why. Like, I knew it wasn't because I felt insecure about my ability to manifest it by that specific date and time, but something felt off when I was reality selecting. And so I was like, don't worry, we'll just persist through this. And every single day I would check to see if the date had changed on Amazon, like the date of delivery would have changed, and it didn't. And so what ended up happening was that first Saturday came and went. I did not get my chair that Saturday. And so naturally I'm like irritated at this. I'm like, like it put me more into a state of not having, because I had missed the mark on that particular deadline. And I could tell that I was not fully aligned. Like, I knew that there was something within my system that wasn't, fully aligned with the reality where I got the manifestation on that particular Saturday. But I was like, okay, no worries. We're going to do it for this next coming Saturday. So I, again, reality select for the new Saturday where I got my manifestation. And I saw myself, putting the chair together on the following Saturday. Well, what ended up happening was 3 days into the new week on Wednesday, I remember looking at the Amazon delivery date estimate. And what ended up happening was the delivery date got pushed back further. So instead of me getting the chair within 3 weeks, it ended up turning into 4 weeks. So basically the manifestation got delayed, the opposite of what I was going for. And like I said, the most frustrating part about this was the fact that I could tell that something was off within my system, but I was not fully aware of what was off within my system. And so when I saw the date get extended instead of shortened, I remember in that moment, I was like, you know what? It's going to come when it's going to come, and I'm going to be okay with that. It's not that big of a deal. It's fine. And so although I said those words, I still felt a little bit like, ugh, this is not ideal. I wish it was coming on Saturday. This is just not what I wanted, right? But I remember what ended up happening was because I was still sitting in my old office chair and still experiencing the back pain that I got from sitting in that chair, I remember I was like, okay, I'm going to just, make the best of where I currently am in my current reality. And I ended up taking a pillow and putting it behind the chair on the spot of the chair that was hurting my lower back. And immediately when I put the pillow on the back of the chair and I felt the relief after I had been experiencing pain for like however many weeks until I had decided to put the pillow there, I felt better. I was like, yeah, no, I don't need this chair to come. I felt physically better. It was only then that I felt my level of insecurity, like I need this chair to come on Saturday in order to avoid this back pain, to a secure feeling of I don't need my manifestation anymore because I found a way to relieve my back pain without the chair. I kid you not. The next morning, I went on Amazon and it told me that the date had readjusted again, but to that next Saturday that I had been intending. And what ended up coming to fruition was that Saturday I got my office chair, and I got it at a very specific time. Like, I had specifically planned it for the middle of the day after I finished work, and it came at noon on that Saturday. So I got my manifestation, and I really like that story because it taught me how to physically make my physical reality better or more favorable without my manifestation in physical form in that given moment. So if you're in a 3D reality level of insecurity when it comes to detachment, try finding a way to enjoy your physical reality, or try to find a way to alleviate the discomfort you're feeling in physical reality without having your manifestation. Now, the next level of insecurity is a personal identity insecurity. So the story that I want to share with this as well, I've actually shared on my channel before, but it also has to do with manifesting Amazon packages. And it was something that I fell into by accident. So when I first started getting really good at manifesting Amazon packages, and by really good at manifesting them, I mean like I would get them at very specific dates and very specific times and very consistently. And so what ended up happening was, because I kept seeing consistent results, I started to identify as being a really good reality selector, as being a really good manifester. And then one day, I didn't get an Amazon package when I had intended it. What ended up happening was I had accidentally developed an identity based off of a physical experience rather than having the identity within myself first. In other words, I was being dependent on my physical reality to tell me who I was or where my state of consciousness was. I created a need for the physical reality to do a certain thing in order to make me feel secure in my own self-concept or in my own identity, in my own state of being. And as we know with manifesting, inner creates outer. And I ended up doing things backwards. The way that I became aware of this was actually by doing this practice that I do sometimes when it comes to experiencing contrast in my physical reality, where I basically ask myself, who do I want to be in this shadow of contrast? Like, how do I want to express my state of being no matter what's happening in my physical reality? And when I asked myself that question, that's when I realized that I had things backwards. I realized that I was being dependent on my physical experience, because the answer that came to me was actually, I want to believe that I'm a master manifester no matter what's happening in my physical reality. Like, that was my pure desire. I wanted to believe and truly feel and know that I was the creator of everything in my physical reality. And so when I had that answer come to me, I realized that I was doing things backwards. I was being dependent on these Amazon packages coming by very specific dates and times. And if that Amazon package didn't come, then my identity was not real or not truthful. And as we know, inner creates outer. So me being dependent on the external reality to do something in order for me to identify as something was backwards. And so this experience not only helped me become aware of this level of insecurity that can sometimes happen with manifestations, but it also helped me become aware of a higher level of understanding with how reality creation works. Inner creates outer, always. Finding that level of security within yourself first is the secret to learning how to project onto the screen of space what you want to experience. So if you feel like you need your manifestation in order to be someone or in order to believe your own self-concept, try finding a way to find security in your own identity, in your own self-concept, even if that's just reminding yourself that I am God of my reality, I am awareness. But the idea is to identify with your new self-concept before you see a physical reflection. Or in other words, not to be dependent on your physical experience to tell you who you are or to tell you who you want to be or how you want to express yourself. With this particular level of insecurity, something that can be really helpful is your own belief structures and your own awareness of how reality operates. Again, keeping in mind that inner creates outer. Reality is just a projection, and that includes a projection of your own identity. Now, the last level of attachment that I want to share is a manifestation process level of insecurity. And what I mean by this one in particular is you don't necessarily feel secure in your knowledge or maybe even your ability to manifest what you want. And for this particular level of insecurity, I actually don't have a story, but I do have a few pieces of information to be aware of if you are experiencing a certain level of insecurity in your ability to manifest what you want. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this one's kind of tied into this idea of self-concept, and more specifically your self-concept in your ability to manifest what you want, but it can be a little bit different. The best ways that I have found to finding a higher level of security with your ability to manifest something is, again, by reminding yourself of the things you already know and the things that you already resonate within the manifestation process itself. So for example, one of the ways that you can find security in your ability to manifest something can be found in your ability to persist no matter what's happening in physical reality. This was something that I noticed when I went through my phase of robotic affirming. When I was doing robotic affirmations, I didn't really think that I was detaching. I actually saw myself as more so persisting no matter what happened in my physical reality. In fact, at that point in time, or at that point in my life, I didn't even really believe in detachment. But what I was actually doing when I was persisting from that perspective was finding a level of security within my own ability to say a string of words no matter what happened in my physical reality. What I was unknowingly doing was actually still practicing a form of detachment, except I found my level of security in my ability to persist no matter what. So, in other words, it was the information about my ability to persist until I got it in physical reality that gave me that level or that feeling of security in my ability to manifest. It wasn't necessarily this feeling that I was going to get what I wanted, but it was this feeling that came from the decision of me deciding to persist no matter what happened in my physical reality. So, although I wasn't seeing it from the perspective of, hey, I'm like detaching because I'm persisting, I was unknowingly practicing this art of detachment without even realizing it because I felt secure in my ability to persist no matter what. So, in a way, I found a way to be okay without my manifestation through the manifestation process itself, and more specifically, through my ability to persist in my imagination. But the main point I want to drive home when it comes to this spectrum of detachment and how to turn your detachment knob to a more secure state of being is first, the only reason why you want to turn the detachment knob to a secure state of being is only because you don't want to go back into your physical reality from the perspective of lack. The whole point of using our imagination is to shift our state of consciousness to having the manifestation. When we have our manifestation, whether physically or in our imagination, we naturally have a feeling of security. Lack is a very insecure state of being. So if you're feeling insecure about your manifestation, what that can indicate is that you are not fully in alignment with having the thing that you want in your imagination or within your state of consciousness. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. All that means is that there's still a part of you that is in step number one of you receiving your desire. The idea of detachment is just finding a way to secure your state of being until it projects into physical reality. I also want to point out the fact that you can actually reality select from a pre-detached state of being. So one thing that I've noticed within myself is that the more in my God state that I am, or in other words, the more calm, chill, indifferent, and neutral state of being that I'm in, and more specifically, the more observant state of being I'm in, the higher level of security I start with when it comes to picking the reality that I want. So for me, it's a lot easier to learn how to like chill out and go into observation mode, pick the reality that I want, make sure that my belief knob is turned to possibility, and then basically just decide, yes, that's what I want. This is the manifestation. This is the reality I want to experience. And by starting off my reality selection process in that way, I've noticed that things happen a lot faster. Like I don't have to worry about detaching from the outcome because I'm already detached. I'm already chill. I'm already in my God state of being. I already know that I'm God in my reality. And all I have to do is exert my free will in deciding what I prefer rather than what I do not prefer. Another thing I want to point out is that you don't necessarily need to maintain a positive state of being 24/7 in order to manifest what you want. You can experience all of the unfavorable states of being, like crying or feeling angry or frustrated, and still get what you want. The idea of detachment is not always about maintaining the most perfect state of being in relationship to your manifestation. Rather, it's a form of finding your own levels of security within your own state of consciousness so that you're not accidentally projecting lack into your physical reality. You can handle and experience reality however you want to experience it. You can cry and feel any and all of the different types of states of being that encompasses being a human and interact normally with your physical reality. In fact, sometimes crying or getting angry is the favorable state of being that you want to experience in a given present moment. Learning how to detach and finding higher levels of security is not necessarily about experiencing a certain emotion consistently. Rather, it's about finding a way to be okay no matter what happens in physical reality and or how you react to physical reality. Becoming aware of your own state of consciousness and learning how to chill out and be okay right now is the very thing that allows you to automatically move through unfavorable realities to more favorable ones. If you're ever unsure about how to find a level of security with your manifestation, try using the spectrum of detachment as a starting point to guide yourself back to a secure state of being in relationship to your manifestation. I know this was a longer video, but there's a lot I could say on detachment and how to detach from your manifestation. The way that I really like to look at it is just finding a higher level of security with your manifestation so that you're not going back to the reality where you lack it in your imagination. Because lack is an insecure state of being. So finding a secure state of being is what I have found to be one of the major keys in learning how to shift your consciousness and therefore your reality in very fast ways. But I'm going to end the video here. As always, definitely let me know what you think about the video in the comments below. I love hearing everyone's different perspectives. But that's all for now. Until next time, keep creating, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.